Right. Hey, hey. Hi, guys. Welcome back. All right. So let's go ahead and jump on into this. It's going to be a collective message. And I'm just going to kind of really like clear the slate and say, universe, you want to weigh in? You want to give us hopefully a really powerful message? What would be the greatest concept, perhaps, for right now? Happy New Year, everybody. Page of Swords. There is learning going on all around. There's also somebody who has just like reached a point of like graduation from something that they were gathering information about, something they were trying to learn about. This says, although we never stop learning, says that we may have a Libra, Gemini, or Aquarius who has just through their continued sometimes spying, but gathering of information, they have come to a sense of awareness, a conclusion, and it is about how to make a wish come true. Okay, that's an amazing energy to start out with 2025. Now, 2025 can also be a year where we will get a taste of like how an entire era is going to be changing, because this is a year where four of our outermost planets are going to also be changing their position, but we get like a taste test of it in 2025 until they all settle into their new signs in 2026. So kind of an interesting energy on this where you have a character who has learned maybe about honesty, about truth. They maybe have also been spying on someone for a period of time, and they have been recognizing that we have a feminine, possibly, who has been doing her best to keep on keeping on. They may have recognized something about her that she could be telling a lie and acting like everything's fine when in fact she's been working very hard to hold herself together. Now, I could also interpret this as, uh, what someone has learned, what they've gathered is the importance of being honest and straightforward, particularly about the things that they feel most, desperate for. Maybe even the idea that some of the things that we want most in life are the things that we're afraid we won't get, or they're the things that stir up fear within us. And so I could look at this as his lesson, or I could look at this as him recognizing something about another person. Let's see if we can flesh this out a little bit more. Tell me just about the Page of Swords. The Emperor. He has really graduated to an incredible status. He's become an emperor. Now, he's upright, so this is a good card, but it does seem like he has needed to learn about humans. Maybe, understanding what makes people tick, what makes people who they are, what makes people choose the things that they choose in life. Perhaps observation was key to him finally like gaining his own personal empowerment. This masculine perhaps just now feels really good about himself. And maybe it's because he started to realize, you know what, this is a journey that we're all on. Everybody's trying to learn how to become more confident. Everybody has their fears. It's not just me, because he certainly has been spying and watching and gathering information and knowledge about truth versus, how do we all kind of try to just hold it together when maybe we're not feeling particularly powerful. Maybe he's learned something through watching this feminine that helped him evolve to become more empowered himself. This almost feels like somebody who thought other people were like more powerful than he was. Other people were somehow having easier time of it than he was. Maybe he was deeply insecure and he thought he was the only one. And after watching others more closely, he's learned something. To clarify this Seven of Swords, we show the Five of Wands sideways. This is a feminine whose life has clearly not been easy. She's had to be a problem solver, a decision maker. She's tried to find the best answers to things. She's tried to understand the world the best she could. She's tried to keep a smile on her face, perhaps. The reason I don't read this card in such a negative light is because, yes, we have a serpent, right? But serpent just represents change and wisdom and mysticism. And of course, this is Year of the Snake. But there's roses all over it, meaning She'd been trying to act like everything's fine and hide maybe her own fears and grief. You notice that she's been, holding on to her clutch of eggs. Well, you can't blame any creature for trying to hold on to their little clutch of eggs, right? I mean, it's instinct. I'm trying to protect what I have. I'm trying to protect my babies. I'm trying to protect, the things that are mine. I'm trying to protect things, and I'm trying to be polite to others and not let them see just how much is something very near and dear to her heart she had been trying to protect, which might have been her own heart. This is a feminine who maybe has dealt with unreliable people. Maybe I would even suggest this could be a feminine who had a difficult, like right down to childhood. Maybe she was always put in the bizarre position of having to be the peacekeeper in a family setting. She maybe has always had to learn how to be more diplomatic. She's had to figure out how to think on her feet and problem solve, and like not show the entire world her own struggles, because there's so much else to be done. There's so much other work to be done, but she has a soft heart that she's trying to protect, or something about this. She's not. What did they think of her before? Let me ask this. What did this masculine think of her before? Queen of Pentacles. They thought she had everything all worked out. She's super powerful. There she is, Queen of Pentacles. She's got no worries. She's super grounded. She's arrived. She has this perfect, perfectly planned life, perfectly balanced life, all the money she would ever need access to, and she's generous. Emperor sideways, and they saw themselves as not as good as her. They saw themselves as somebody that she was weighing and measuring, trying to figure out where their flaws were, seeing them as, are you good enough for me? That's how they viewed her, which really, as we can see, is a reflection of how they were really seeing the world through their lens. It's like okay, so this is an interesting story, because what we have is possibly a masculine who, out of their insecurities, right, we see it here, they imagined that somebody else was better than them. She was so much more secure, and she was looking down at them, or finding some flaw in them, or deciding that they weren't really good enough. That's who he was. How he viewed her in the past. How does he view her now? And we see that Seven of Swords, and we see that, actually, I should change decks here, just so that if we're going to get any repetitious cards, we give the decks freedom to do that. How do you see her now after all this kind of studying her? Five of Coins. He sees her as somebody who actually is really, he sees her with 2 5s and a 7. All those are cards of change, but he sees her as somebody who's actually in a deficit position, or somebody who maybe he thinks, oh, no, she's insecure, or maybe she's out there on her own. We have a 2 of Swords. We have the Star. On one hand, it's not like they see her as like, oh, she's so pitiful, she doesn't have enough. But what they're realizing is, for all the deficit that she has, all the lack of help she's had, she's tried to just say, with her own sense of pride, I'm going to carry on. I have to make more of my own life. I have to find a way to rise. I have to go after my goals. I have to keep, not focusing on what's not working for me, but rather trying. I have to try to strive for something better. I'm not going to air my woes. I'm not going to. She does have pride. They see her as somebody who has pride. They also see her as somebody who has had tremendous disadvantages that maybe they were not aware of. They hadn't considered that. Here they were insecure, and they'd never considered her insecurities, her lack, the things she was hungry for, the things she didn't have, the kind of, I don't know, she comes across as kind of like a lonely character, a little solitary, somebody who's trying to do her best is what they're realizing. Somebody who smiles a lot, but it might be because it's like, I mean, what else are you going to do? She doesn't want to dump her problems on somebody else. And she's also, that's kind of the method that she uses to try to say, despite the blockages, despite the things that I don't have, I'm going to just try to continue to reach my goals. I have to try to heal from the things that have hurt me. I have to act like things are roses even when they aren't, because if I really sit down and just cry, I may not, continue to push toward my goals. And then who's going to come and dry my eyes as I sit here and cry? Well, nobody's coming for me. Nobody's coming to help me. I'm thinking he's just now realizing that about her. that he might have seen her as like, oh, she's so confident, she has it all, not realizing what she has is determination to try to keep going, and the backbone to say, I don't think anybody's got my back, so I got to have my own back, and I got to try to stay grounded, and I got to try to keep reaching for things. I got to keep trying to find my way forward, because every single one of these cards, all we see is her alone, right? Alone. Well, I guess here she is dealing with other people's problems, but otherwise she's alone. She's alone. She's alone. She's alone. I don't think that they understood her at all in the past. This divine masculine is just now realizing maybe he was too indulgent with his own fears, and then he projected. Let me ask, how were you projecting toward her in the past, back when you thought she was a Queen of Pentacles? That's what I figured. 5 of Swords. He was pissed at her. In the past, she was, oh, aren't you so good? Aren't you too good for me? Aren't you the one who's probably sitting there and you're deciding how I'm not good enough and your words are to cut me down? Wow. So he was hostile toward her in the past because in his insecurities, he imagined she was more powerful than he was, and that she was picking fights with him. So he was hostile toward her, even wanting to rile her. And now he's seeing it so differently. Oh my God, she kept her own wounds and her even loneliness and her struggles to herself because of her own sense of pride to just try to carry on, but she didn't have anybody beside her. Liberation. This is like, I feel like he had no idea who he was actually dealing with, that she was trying to better her own circumstances, that she did not come from an easy background, but she just didn't dump her garbage on anybody else. She didn't play her tiny violin and tell everybody what her woes had been. How did he figure this out? We saw that he was spying on her to a certain extent. By the way, that is the Judgment card, but he's realizing now she was trying to transform her own life. She was reaching for something better. I don't think she was even in a stable place when he met her. She might have been clawing her way towards stability, but he thought she already had it all going on. Her life was so perfect. On his side, I said, how did he figure this out? We have the Messenger of Wands and we have the Tower. And it's funny because this Messenger of Wands would normally be, it's like the Page of Wands, but we have, like, this is passion, typically, or a spark of, like interest. But this is somebody who, I don't know, he's wearing the galaxy coat. So I'm thinking that this isn't really a message like from him to her, or not really communication, but rather how he may have figured this out after collecting some information, after spying a little bit. It might have had much to do with, I mean, again, we see the spying for sure, but it had to do with either the divine, like, I feel like he was always still attracted to her, but maybe as his ego dropped, it's almost like he couldn't see her for who she was if he were too close to her, because he was always hostile with her because of his insecurities and his assumption that she was so much better than him. And when he pulled away from her and saw her from a distance, I think there was still, yeah, but I like her. And then somehow he stopped being insecure. He dropped his own ego and he looked at her more objectively. He looked at her from a distance. Maybe he had put her on a pedestal and then put himself down below that, and so set himself up to feel less than, and never really got to know her because it was so much about him. Insecurities will do that. It's not like somebody's trying to be selfish and make it all about them, but they couldn't help it. He couldn't help but make it all about him because he was insecure. And then he pulls away, and then he can see her more clearly. Why? Tell me about that Messenger of Wands, because I do feel like he was always still attracted to her. Messenger of Swords. There we go again with the spying. I don't know if she has a particular quest for knowledge. We see this celestial background. Maybe she's into things like astrology or astronomy. Maybe she has an active mind. She's interested in learning and reading because she's trying to piece the world together. She enjoys learning. He may have started to recognize something about that, or maybe he finally was able to listen from a distance to, like, her words, or even reread words that she wrote to him. Something about, he got insight into her mind. And her mind somehow is very celestially paired up with his. Maybe he even started to say, wow, she's a lot more like me than what I realized. I'm seeing the commonality. I don't know, maybe he also got into like things like astrology and zodiac and was like, wait a minute, I started to learn about her without talking to her to a certain extent, and started to say, oh my gosh, I wonder if her placements and her chart are somehow indicative of some things about her that now I understand from a different perspective. I mean, maybe he went down that road, or maybe this is her who's intrigued by things like that. But this all seems like it's from a distance. He got the macro vision. You have the Hanged Man in the reverse. It really made him see her from a completely different lens. It's like he was finally able to say, I wonder what her life was like. I wonder why she is who she is today. I wonder what motivates her. I wonder what's happened in her love life. I wonder. I do think he might have gone back and either listened to things that she, or reread things that she wrote or something along those lines as well, just because the sword is there and it's a messenger. Maybe he reread texts and things from her that he had made. We can interpret anything wrong depending on what mindset we're in. We can only be as good a listener as maybe our attitude that day. If we're in a pissed off mood, anything anybody says we can take as further insult or further reason to pick a fight with that person. I'm thinking that's who he was in the past, and then he finally, I don't think he had to be away from her to be able to see her for who she was and take his own lens of like, I'm always going to be put on the defensive when I'm around her because she's so awesome and I'm just nothing. He finally stopped doing that. Tell me about the Tower. The Eight of Pentacles sideways, as he dropped that ego and he started to really contemplate, now wait a second, we're all just human, right? Why did I assume that she doesn't have anything to work on? Why did I think that her life is so easy? Why did I think everything comes easy to her? I don't really know what her life has been. Maybe he even got this vision of like, maybe I never asked her where she came from or what her childhood been like, what her work ethics have been like, or maybe looking at her work ethics, it started to click. Like, wait a minute, why does she work either so hard? Because as a Queen of Pentacles, he thought she was grounded and had tons of money and everything was perfect. But he started to realize something about her, like, well, how'd she get that way? I didn't know how she got that way. Maybe she's only got what she's earned. Maybe she's had to work and toil and scrape to get to where she is. Three of Cups. He started to see her as somebody that was actually supportive, somebody that was actually like friendly and warm, and somebody who simply held back a lot of her own hurts, pains, and fears. He couldn't see that or have compassion for who she was before, when he was still tangled up in his own emotions. You know what this big message is? I think it's to realize that the only way we can really get to know somebody is if we get out of our own way and we can see who they really are, instead of only seeing it through our lens of who we've assumed they are because of our, mentality and hurts. I mean, that's definitely what happened for him, right? Action of Wands. He has changed everything about how he thinks about her. His entire vision of who she is has changed. He wants to move toward her at this point. He's passionate about her now. Now he thinks she's wonderful, where once upon a time he was very hostile with her. Okay, all I can say is this person's opinion of her has finally shifted to such a huge extent, but it's ironic that it shifted while he was away from her and only viewing her from a distance. All right, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thanks for giving it a thumbs up.